Welcome to the No BS Short-Term Rental Podcast, an unfiltered look into the global vacation and short-term rental industry.
I'm Mateo Bradford.
And I'm John Stokinger.
And this is our podcast. We bring the right people to the table at the right time, giving you an inside view and take on the short-term rental industry like no other podcast can. This season of the No BS Pod is proudly brought to you by our friends Beyond and Casa. Beyond offers you the tools you need to get, grow, and optimize your revenue.
And Casago's best-in-class tech streamlines operations for the local traditional vacation rental management company, making them the local heroes with a global presence.
Our podcast is not possible without the generosity of our sponsors. Make sure to check out their exclusive offers specifically geared for our No BS listeners.
Good morning, Mateo. How are you?
Morning. Oh, John, fantastic. How are you?
Good. Hey, this is a big episode. Season 3.
Huge
episode 1. It has potential. I don't want to go ahead and say it's going to be a big episode. We're really excited with our guest. I don't want to spend too much time with this super long-winded intro, but for those of you listening, do your due diligence. Give a like on YouTube, whatever you go ahead. If you're listening on Apple Podcasts, if you're listening on, Spotify, wherever you're listening, go ahead and leave a review, give us 5 stars. If you're liking what you're hearing, share the love with us. Without further ado, I want to go ahead and introduce our first guest and today's guest, the CSO, Chief Strategy Officer, John Banczak with Vacasa. How are you, John?
Welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me. You guys are giving this way too much credit, though. Everyone knows I'm a totally boring guy, so hopefully this doesn't cause your viewership to decline rapidly.
Not even close. Don't even try that.
Nice. I hear nothing but when I talk to people about Vacasa, and I talk to people about who you are, and everyone I speak with is like nothing but admiration, nothing but positive things to say about what you've done through your career, in which we want to go ahead and dive into, and how the transition from getting into the space, your origin story, if you will. But from talking to some pretty smart people I have that I look up to in this space, and say that you are the right guy for the role that you have right now with Vacasa. So, I mean, not one, not two, multiple people are saying that you are in the right place at the right time.
Well, thanks, man. I appreciate that. That makes me feel really good.
Well, good. Well, let's talk about it. I mean, obviously, you're the Chief Strategy Officer, newly appointed Chief Strategy Officer with Vacasa. You're with TurnKey, you're a co-founder and CEO of TurnKey. Prior to that, you were with HomeAway under Carl Shepard's leadership. Please correct me if I'm saying anything incorrectly. Let's talk, how do you stumble into, because everyone has a stumble into story of this space. How does John come into vacation rentals?
Yeah, we talked about this before we started recording, but I had really wanted to move to Portland to do something in the outdoors coming out of college, and I didn't get a job out there, but I interviewed with Northwest Airlines and I got a job there, and I kind of entered the travel industry doing revenue management without really knowing a whole heck of a lot about it. But you can imagine working for an airline is pretty entertaining, and I got to know the space and just kind of stuck with it, slowly migrated to the lodging side of things back in the early 2000s. The airline business is tough, and the airline distribution business is just as difficult. So I tried to take what I learned at the airlines and start to apply them to lodging, really first on the hotel side, and then I migrated into more on the B&B and boutique hotel side. And that's what led me to HomeAway. HomeAway acquired our company, bedandbreakfast.com. And I quickly joined the team that acquired Instant and Escapia because I had a pretty deep knowledge of property management systems. Okay. And that's really how I got more entrenched in the VR space. Now, I've owned a VR. My first one was in 2006. So, similar story to a lot of people who get on this call. I did it through VRBO. I did it on my own. And you kind of learn the ropes that way. So I had a sense for what it took to do it, but it really was that, moving into the role after the incident escapia deals that got me entrenched in it for a few years. And then TurnKey was a result of that, right? We saw the space at the time, right? This is 2011 and 12, and there wasn't a whole lot of automation out there. The property management system space was still pretty limited, right? There were a few, but they weren't prolific, and just saw the opportunity to have more of a technology-driven focus to the actual management side, and that's how TurnKey was born.
Now with TurnKey, that was you just mentioned a focus on tech, which, and we'll dive into it. Obviously, Vacasa is a huge focus on tech.
Mhm.
It's a tech first, and maybe I'm incorrect, and please correct me. But do you think the tech and the tech package is what made that so successful for you?
Yes and no. If you look at what we did at TurnKey and how we, evolved that business, we really launched a lot of cool things there. We put matching photo inspections out back in 2013, right? We designed these in-home tablets that we had, all the way back then. We launched noise monitoring live in 2014, right? And so we were building a lot of cool stuff, but there was a reason behind building that cool stuff, right? If you look at the space the way we looked at it, most property managers consider themselves in the hospitality business, and we were in that business as well, but we really challenged ourselves to question what makes hospitality work. And we would spend a ton of time, TJ and I, literally like sitting in a home watching housekeepers clean the home, right? We would look at how
wait, first of all, like, pause for a second. Imagine being the housekeeper where you're getting watched by JB, and I mean, like, oh shoot,
a little uncomfortable.
But that's a situation I wouldn't want to be in.
We found good ones that give us great feedback, right? And I'm still in touch with a bunch. In fact, we just launched a new release on some of our housekeeping stuff a few weeks ago, and I'm getting texts from one of our Austin-based housekeepers who works at our Loom location, giving me instant feedback on what's working and what's not. And we've actually modified it now twice based on getting texts from this friend of mine who's still cleaning 60 units for us, right? So we found it pretty important to get down to details, and we did a little digging, which I think will either be interesting for people listening to this or controversial, I'm not sure. But when you look up the definition of hospitality, literally in the Oxford Dictionary, and I'm going to quote this, right? It says, the friendly and generous reception and entertainment of guests, visitors, or strangers. Okay. Now, that definition really works well at a hotel where, all your rooms are together. You got one front desk, you have a GM on site. If you have a bunch of good people there, you can kind of make it all work. Right. But we felt it didn't really apply to vacation rentals directly. And with the homes we had spread out over Austin, because when we started, we really managed in Austin only for the first, call it, 9 months, right? What we realized was, wow, we're actually in a logistics business, right? And when you look up the definition of logistics, I'm going to read it from you from the same source: the detailed coordination of a complex operation involving many people, facilities, and supplies. Doesn't that sound a lot more like a vacation rental business than the hotel definition?
Yeah, I think I agree with you for sure. I think where I think like it's almost like a meld of the two.
Yeah,
like I think
hybrid.
that that of course, like looking at it just, but without being hospitable, doing your logistics, it could be very cold.
Absolutely. And so we started down that path, right? What we found is guests were all booking online. They wanted contactless check-in, right? They hated having to deal with a key and a person, even back then, right? Just give me an easy way to get in. And then we had nobody on site, right? So we realized, hey, if we wanted to provide good hospitality, we first had to provide great logistics, right? If you had bad logistics and you weren't on site to greet them, then it was all going to fall apart.
Right.
So we decided, okay, let's make sure our logistics are in order, right? And then we dove deeper. If you look at how great logistics companies succeed, they all build great technology for their operations, right? And a foundational piece of that is to be able to track everything, right? So we quickly started building a system in place based primarily on Six Sigma and in reality, more or less sort of a Kaizen strategy.
Okay.
To do logistics in a way that supported hospitality. And there's a bunch of companies like this out there that sort of realized they were in a different business, like Amazon, right? Bezos credits in eagerness to invent as part of the main tenets of their success. He talks about how Amazon loves to pioneer. And whenever they tried to copy something someone else was doing, they already started to fail at it. And so we had a similar mindset. How do we actually build a platform that allows us to effectively manage these logistics and then base hospitality on that? And we knew that, our ambitions were big, right? We didn't want to be a one location PM. And I think a smaller local PM can think of themselves as a hospitality business, and not only because they won't have the resources to go build their own platform. They've got to use some of the great software that's available. But we did, and we realized that we were going to fail at hospitality if we did not build great logistics, assuming we wanted to be in hundreds of locations.
Right.
Right. So it's a different thing. And, you see this, mental shift happen at a lot of companies, right? Think about, if you go back, it's probably before your time, but look at Expedia versus Travelocity, right? In my opinion, one of the reasons Expedia eventually dominated Travelocity and basically bought them for very, very low price was that Travelocity really was travel agents that thought, hey, let's take our business online. And Expedia was started by a Microsoft guy who realized they were a technology company trying to reinvent travel. And there's just a long list of this, right? Amazon, the reason Amazon's so successful is they unlocked 2-day delivery, right? They were an online retailer, but they realized logistics was the key to their success. How do we unlock getting something to someone quickly, anywhere, and reliably, right? So it's not retail at all. It's not eyeballs, not conversion rate. It's not user interface. Logistics was the key to their success.
I mean, look at Netflix. Netflix is same deal. Is they first started off like we've had a Netflix subscription for so long. It was when we were getting the DVDs mailed in the mail. They figured out that logistics, and then they went over to the streaming. This makes a ton of sense. As logistics as a foundation.
Yeah.
But without that hospitality on top of it, it's still just logistics.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. I think that the middle ground is where the success lies, right? Because one absent of the other doesn't necessarily get you where you need to go. But one of the things I like that you said, I think you were coming up with the formula of how to scale, right? Because none of this matters if you're not successful in what you do, right? Like at the end of the day, in one of those areas. And what are we always talking about in our industry? Like everyone, how big do you want to get, and scaling, and how do you get there, and who does it right? Looking at those analogies, fast forward in 5 to 10 years, who are we going to be talking about, right? Like, are we going to be talking about those who innovated and didn't lose kind of the soul of what we're doing? Because that part, I think, is where a lot of people get stuck around what their definition of hospitality and the human component and dealing with families. And that's it's traditionally, right, with the vacation rental side of the business, not just I call it the art of lodging, right? Because it truly is. It's a bit science, it's a bit creativity, it's a bit all of these things. But at the end of the day, it's figuring out what works. Because if feet aren't through the door and heads aren't in beds, it's all theoretical.
That's right. That's right. And you've got to look, you can't ignore hospitality. It's just that if you if you are in one location, that may be your only focus is the hospitality side. If you're in 600 markets, you've got to be, if you're not tight on logistics, you'll never succeed at hospitality.
Exactly.
And then ultimately you've got to, you get back to that measure everything comment. You've got to measure everything. You've got to measure your satisfaction first and foremost. And we're maniacal about that in every context. Satisfaction with the clean, satisfaction with someone dealing with our people on the phone, satisfaction with the check-in process, guest and owner NPS. We're pretty comfortable that we are, among the best in the business at all of those. But yeah, if you're ignoring that, then your logistics has failed as well.
Right. Have you spent hours determining what rate you should charge at your short-term rental property?
Of course you have. This is a huge part of the vacation rental business, and it can be tricky knowing if your place is on par with other properties in the area. But now you don't have to wonder. You don't have to worry. And that's because it's so much easier pricing out your properties with Beyond Pricing.
Here's how it works. Beyond uses a dynamic pricing tool along with in-depth market research to make sure your property is valued exactly how it should be. They take dozens of factors into account, including your property's location, other rental rates in the area, any amenities on your property, nearby attractions, all of the things that most of us just wouldn't think about when pricing our own properties. That way you don't miss out on profits and your guests feel confident in the rate that they're paying, so they come back again and again and again.
That's a win-win. And it gets even better. Beyond's platform is easy to use, so you can save time and think about other areas of your business, or enjoy your free time a little more now that you won't be stressing out about the rate you're charging. There's a reason why hundreds of single and multi-property owners trust Beyond's platform to determine what they should charge guests. Beyond is dedicated to the short-term rental community. It's where their business was born, and it's where they intend to stay.
Don't wait, get the profits you deserve. Go to gobeyondpricing.com/no-BS for a free portfolio assessment and a $30 credit when you sign up. That's go.beyondpricing/NO-BS. Thanks for listening. And now let's get back to the episode. Now, do you think that, with your focus, as in TurnKey's focus on these things, is that what made, and obviously your scale, like you had scaled, like let's not take away like how big you've gotten as far as acquisitions go. Is that, or M&A kind of goes, is that where you think made you so tasty for Vacasa? And like when that came out, like, it was pretty big news, that, Vacasa went from being, and I, obviously you can know the numbers, but like when you were acquired by Vacasa and you came over, like how much inventory did you have at that time? And what did that bring Vacasa's inventory to?
I forget the exact numbers, but it was, we were near 6,000 and I forget where they were. But I think they were around 20, 22, something. 23, something like that.
Yeah. So it's a quarter again, adding 25% on top of, with one deal. It's but it's not just the inventory, it's the tech. Everything that was written about it is what you had built. It is these logistics that you built, that your foundation is a lot on top of the inventory, was a lot of what Vacasa was interested in, correct?
Yeah, I think there was mutual interest across the board. They had a very similar internal mindset on growth. They've got a great career track for people, benefits. They had just as good of metrics as we had on satisfaction, owner sat, guest sat, reviews. Like we were very similar businesses in a lot of ways. And bringing their scale with a lot of the concepts that we built was just a great fit. And it is to this day. I think we reported this a month or so ago, but 93% of all people in the field are still working for Vacasa now 14 months later, which is pretty amazing, right? Folks have blended in there really well, and it's a great success story.
Seems like it was a great marriage of the mindset too, right? Because if you look at, Scott, Eric, Cliff, what they built within Vacasa was something new and pioneering, right? Going back to what we were talking about before, it rubbed some people the wrong way. They were doing when you do new things, it's always going to do that, right? But what they did, like they're some of the smartest people I know, straight up.
Cliff, they are
guys, and their ideas around revenue management, building in their internal systems, not just buying off the shelf and doing these things and taking this approach is, when I look at them as trailblazers for real, and no Portland pun, so because I'm a Laker fan, but I look at them as trailblazers, and I have a tremendous amount of respect for them and what they did, because look at the change that it brought. Look at how it shook the industry, right? Look at how it brought technology to the forefront, innovation to the forefront, and heavy is the head that wears the crown, right? Because people are going to take shots at, why you do this, why'd you do that, and as forgetting that this is all new, right? Like these are all new things, and we're learning, and not everything is successful all the time, and not everything is the perfect shining star all the time. But sheesh, I mean, shit, look at the impact.
I agree, and it's a great example of blending what I would call sort of industry outsiders with industry insiders, right? Getting Bob to join them, Bob Milne, really helped enable their success. They were smart enough to realize, like, hey, we need a real hospitality veteran in here. But when you look at a lot of the companies that we talk about today as household names in travel, and you think about how many of them were actually started by someone who was never in travel before, it's kind of nuts, right? Look at VRBO. Brian and Carl had never done a travel business before. Brian Chesky at Airbnb. No. Rich Barton started Expedia. He was at Microsoft. He had nothing to do with travel. Jay Walker at Priceline. Yeah. Right. The list just goes on and on of folks who have kind of come in and said, hey, let's think about a new way. And that's really Eric Brion. And he brought in a lot of great people from the industry to help him out. But he had a vision that was not necessarily, developed by decades of being in that space. So it's ended up being a good combination. But I think, anyone will realize that you don't get there unless you do have some industry people in there like Bob and the team. And, for the most part, TurnKey was the same way, right? I mean, we hired people out of lodging like crazy to help us with that aspect of the business.
Well, I think it's interesting. Where's there too, right? Like you're building, but where you're building with this kind of, how do you scale? Like, I don't think they were building with the intent of, they knew exactly what they wanted their end state to be, right? They were hitting more metrics of like, how can we improve this? How can we scale? They started with 8 homes, right? Yeah. 8. Think about that, right? Like, of the people that we talk about, I talked to on this show, some have built some incredible businesses, thousands of units. They started with 8. Mm-hmm. And look at how long it took for them to get from 8 to one of the premier companies within the industry that everyone's looking at, talking about, scrutinizing.
Like, that's right.
I mean, you guys, 8 to what, 37,000 now? I'm sure you're more, because I just talked to someone that sold to you yesterday. So it's a few more, but is that about 37, 38,000?
I think that's what we reported the last time. It was 37. Yeah.
Okay. Awesome. That's pretty phenomenal. Like you're the number one, the largest property management company in the world. Through, from 8 to that, you've gone public, which, has, we've seen, both sides of that. We've seen both positive things about that. There's a lot of hype about it. And then there's more recent things in the news that aren't as cherry. And we'll kind of dive into that in a little bit. But like, a question I want to ask, and if we're okay to kind of start talking about this, is like, can we talk about the decision to go public, and how that like, if there was a transition in mindset, that you had to do. Obviously, my assumption is that, as a goal and as a company, it's still logistics and hospitality first. No matter how the money's coming in, that's always your goal. You want to give a great experience from start to finish for your guests. that was, for any company that's pre-IPO and going to IPO, like ultimately you don't want to change anything. You have to change some things because there's different people you have to please, right? But ultimately the goal is, all right, how do we make this bigger and better? And it's not just about a money grab, it's about continuing to scale. I mean, that's why you go to, you go public, because you want to keep scaling. And I'm kind of all over the place. I do that sometimes. Imagine that. Teo knows. Where we're at though right now is, to make from in the news, we saw that we currently are sitting at like 37,000 doors and citing profitability and for the full year in 2023. So next year you're citing profitability. How many doors do you expect to add between now and then to reach that milestone? And in addition, other than just acquiring more inventory, like what do you, in your role as Chief Strategy Officer, what do you have to do to go ahead and get there?
Yeah, so we don't really share a forward projection on home count for a bunch of reasons, but we did share in our earnings announcement how we focus and how we try to strike that balance between growth and profitability. Ultimately, we're really focused on individual unit growth, signing up individual homeowners, and we do most of our growth now, sort of a traditional organic one-on-one sale. Mm-hmm. And that's working really well, right? I mean, I think we added like 2.5 times at a greater speed than we did last year. And it's because we've added a lot of salespeople, right? We've got hundreds of folks out there that we hired in 2021 who now are, tenured and trained, and they follow a pretty predictable, sales approach. That's what we're really trying to do, is grow that unit account. And when you're growing that, it requires funding, right? That's part of the justification to go public, is it's a funding event. It's a way to get out there and raise some money. But yeah, as you mentioned, I don't know who you talked to yesterday. We still do a lot of portfolio additions, right? We're still an active acquirer, as you've seen. We don't announce them individually anymore. Primarily because you got to be a little careful on sort of the whole public, company announced follow a path format.
Right. And that's why I didn't bring it up by name here on the show too.
Yeah. That's. I mean, look, the stuff gets out eventually, but we're not sort of in the business of naming everyone that we do these days.
Oh, these are the great answers. Great answer to the question. I kind of wanted to continue on that. We're talking about, Vacasa coming into, or TurnKey back in the day, even, as a big player in the space of, there's like two camps of where, for property manager is in a community, and if Vacasa is coming in to the community, they're a new player in said community that is an established, short-term rental / vacation rental, area. Camp one is, they're pissed off because Vacasa can't bring the local touch that our regional travelers want, right? But camp two is, we're property managers, so they're actually like, what, this isn't a bad thing, like Vacasa is gonna, it's gonna make some of these homeowners a little disappointed. There's gonna be churn, and we can go in and kind of acquire the, pickups that churn and add to our own inventory, so. What are your thoughts on this? And is there any truth? Or obviously there's truth, because these are the feelings of these property managers. But I guess what are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, honestly, we get along pretty well with the overwhelming majority of local PMs. We have a lot of people that go to a lot of conferences, and it's a pretty congenial bunch of folks, right? And I don't think we would be able to acquire, the hundreds of small PMs if we didn't get along with them. Certainly we get it. There's a few folks that don't seem to like us, but for the most part, that to us is a lot of noise. As for camp one, we may not have founded our business in each local market, but we're pretty dedicated to keeping the local staffs that we bring on. We always have been, right? I mean, when we're talking internally about a deal, the discussion is often around how critical it is to keep the staff, and name by name, who can we try to keep and trust they're going to stay. And we really try to do that and give them better benefits and so on. So it's really pretty important that we are local. And, you know, I think that's one of the misconceptions. I mean, we've got thousands and thousands and thousands of local employees out there. In every single market, there's a whole staff, right? We won't manage a home if there's someone not nearby, right? So I think that's, you know, I don't know. I mean, I hear that about Camp One, but I don't know that there's a lot of truth to that. You know, as for Camp Two, you know, I talked about this before, we measure everything, right? And the truth is that owners are incredibly happy with the service we provide. You know, if anyone tells you that they're grabbing Vacasa homeowners in droves, they're just flat out wrong. It's not happening. We monitor every time someone signs up and every time they leave and what they do when they leave. And we're maniacal about monitoring owner satisfaction. So I just don't think that's the case. I can understand why folks want to believe that, but I don't think that's reality out there.
I would agree with you. I think I call bullshit on some of that too, because I think people talk out of both sides of their mouth, just being 100% honest sometimes, because I think people get caught up in this isn't good, this isn't traditional, this is different, like this is different, what are they doing to our markets? But I've had conversations with some of those people who turned around and sold to Vacasa at the same time. And whether they gave up their hands and were just like, forget it. But it's interesting because you do hear the rumblings, but you also see the actions. And I'm about the actions at the end of the day, because you can tell me whatever you want, but what are you doing at the end of the day and what's being done? And I think looking at how companies scale, people might not like it, but at the end of the day, there's no perfect manual with how to do it. And, you know, again, are we having expectations of a perfect practice that just hasn't been invented? You know, there's positive and negatives with everything, right? And depending on how you look at it, but you look at the end of the day, what's been done, who it's been done with, and how it's been done. Is that true? Are those narratives true? And I think it's a smaller percentage. I think it's a vocal percentage, but I do think it's a smaller percentage of people that really think this is a bad thing at the end of the day. And I think there's a lot of people on the other side of this that don't have the answer, right? Like, we're looking at these things in real time. We're looking at these things as these entities are growing and scaling. And we're going to see the effects of what it has on the market. We're going to see the effects of, you know, what it's doing to the local economy and the people that are being hired. Like you said, you have the numbers and the numbers will be there, and we will also see the results, right? Which I think will put things into perspective and hopefully drive, you know, a conversation that's built on that, right? Not based on fear. And I feel like a lot of the Vacasa conversations have come up around fear versus fact. So.
Yep. Yeah, that's a good way to put it. It's a great way to put it.
JB, you talked about that in Camp Two that it's you think that some of that is just wrong and it's, you know, and it's inaccurate. You know, what about or other things about the Vacasa brand? Does the industry, you know, we're big brand people on the show. We're big on, you know, on talking about brands and what brands can do for the space, both positively and negatively. But what is the general public get wrong or misunderstand with the brand Vacasa?
Yeah, well, I think first you have to define the general public, right? I think guests, they don't know any of this inside baseball industry stuff. So, you know, they want to have a great stay. They want the home to be what you said it was going to be and be clean and so on. So we're obviously really focused on that, especially right now with summer being so busy. And then I think there's homeowners, and I would argue that they also are not as privy to the inside baseball stuff. Maybe they are more so than the guests, but they want their home taken care of. They want it to make some money. They want to make sure it's in great shape. They want to be able to use it. So those two constituents really are the folks we focus on. I think on the property management side, you know, I think there's a couple of misperceptions. You know, the first one is the local thing, right? I mean, that we hear that all the time. You know, really what we do not do local is all the stuff that would be pretty highly inefficient to do local. accounting, finance, HR, software, especially stuff like after hours support. And it's interesting because if you think how many local PMs use like a Navis or a Real Voice instead of local folks on the phone, or they get a website produced and maintained by a national firm who's not actually in their market, or they use, say, Guest Hook, a great company who writes listings, or even a property management system that's run by, Inhabit IQ or Escapia, Verbo, or they're using pricing support from Beyond, or even like a concierge product like these are all fantastic local PMs, but none of those functions are local to them, right? So our business isn't that dissimilar, right? We've got a team of people that's really dealing with hospitality, and then a lot of that stuff you got to do offsite. You can do it better offsite, and I do think that's where we excel. I'll use a story about my most recent trip. I just got back from going to a wedding with my family in Hawaii. It was actually fun. It was my daughter's first time they've ever been to a wedding, so they thought it was kind of cool. And of course, we stayed in vacation rentals, right. Vacasa properties. Actually, we stayed in a Marriott hotel a couple nights too, which was great. But Vacasa properties were all booked. We used another full service PM. I have always strongly preferred PMs over Furbos. I just like the consistency. So I usually pick one, preferably a Verma member, and book with them. We got there and the AC was out. And it happens, right? I mean, I get it. Like they had come and they put in a temporary AC in one of the bedrooms, but not the other. So the second bedroom was hot, like really hot. Right. And this was 6 o'clock, so I called them and it was an answering service after hours. He just said, I have just the answering service. There's nothing I can do. They don't get in tomorrow until 10. And I thought, okay, well, here's a local PM. They're supposed to be this great hospitality business. They don't have anybody answering the phone who can do anything. Like they could take notes and tell me they were going to call back the next day. Right. So, would that PM have been better off having an on-call person locally who's maintenance? Yeah. Would they have been better off to have someone who knew to call that on-call person and get an emergency AC vendor in there? Yeah. So we dealt with one night where, the room was 80 some degrees and that's kind of a bummer, but that's not Vacasa, right? We have a team that's ready to back that stuff up, who is ready to answer the phone 24/7. And then of course we have the local people who are fully on call, and it's not like we fix everything, right?
Right.
I get it. Sometimes you just can't. Right. I get that.
Shit happens and you can't do it all the time.
Yeah, you sure try. But point is that that's the type of stuff I think that we can do outside the local market, and many PMs do that. And so I think ultimately we're not that different, and that is a misconception that people have out there. I think there's a few others, right? I mean, if you look at advocacy, a big misconception is, Vacasa's not as involved. Well, the truth is we are, right? We're the largest donor to it. We also do
I've seen Bob write some checks at Verma Advocacy that is pretty fantastic. Like this is up there with everybody. That's definitely not that is a misconception for sure.
Yeah. So, and I have to speak to that too, because here in Atlanta, like you guys, Atlanta's not traditionally even been a market for you guys, right? And you guys actually supported the local effort here through Amstra, right? Which I'm on the board of, which caught me by surprise. I was like, wow, but it was a huge help and continues to be a huge help in our lobbying efforts there. So no, I definitely want to make sure that that's put out there, because it is like, that's something the whole industry should be unifying around.
And there's a lot of behind the scenes work. We tend to not sort of parade around these efforts, but if you look at the local action stuff we've done, in multiple markets, it's pretty impressive, and it's had incredible results.
Yeah.
So again, it's just a different way of doing it, right? What we learned at TurnKey years ago when we got involved in some of the Austin advocacy and some of the California markets was that direct action with local advocacy groups was highly effective and was kind of the way to go.
Makes sense. Makes super sense. And we appreciate, we're big on advocacy here on the podcast, and we have some pretty some touchy subjects that are coming up regarding advocacy and understanding regulations and stuff like that. And we appreciate Vacasa, ponying up, and that's the point. It's not about, it's about action. It's not about, getting your name in front of it and saying, hey, we did this. It's important that, the results are there. And that's the whole point of everything.
Yep.
I do want to bring up and the Vacasa name and wants to talk about, we all know that there's been some things in the works between our friend Steve Milo, our friend Carl Shepard, and the Vacasa name and the Sonder name. And there's actually an article that went out a little bit ago that Steve Milo wrote that was called "Bad for Business: Two Tycoons Face Scrutiny." In all actuality, Milo, who's we have a ton of respect for his mind and what he's doing and what he's doing in his business model, but he basically shits on Vacasa and Sonder and the business model. Do you care to talk on that about that a little bit? Kind of recap.
Yeah, I mean, for starters, we're a vastly different business model than a Sonder, right? I mean, it's in almost every way, shape, or form. So, I'm sure you guys understand that. We can go into more details if you want that, but I think the two are very different. As far as just the commentary in general, I'll use another, Bezos quote. If we can keep our competitors focused on us while we stay focused on the customer, then ultimately we'll turn out all right. And that's really, I think, what we do is we try not to let the noise bother us too much. We're focused on delivering the best service to our customers. We think we're executing really well there. And you can really find similar mantras from a ton of leaders and really almost universally in, teaching of management best practices. There's a great leadership blog that I like to read out there called Heartfelt Leadership. Have you guys heard of this before?
I have not, but I'm writing it down.
Yeah, you should go check it out. There's a couple people who write it, but Deb Bulks is one of the founders. They've been blogging for like 10 years. Like, you literally can see their leadership posts back to like 13 or 2012 or something like that, right? Mm-hmm. And so there's all these snippets of how to be, a great leader, a great founder. And I'm going to quote from her as well, because she has, a lot of stuff on how you deal with competition. One of the things she says is great companies, highly respected professionals, and heartfelt leaders never disparage their competition. They keep the conversation positive and complimentary by focusing on their own ability to uniquely help stakeholders improve their lives and achieve their objectives. And that's really more or less the approach that I've always taken in my career and that I've seen from leadership in my career, whether it was at Northwest and KLM or Accenture, or Expedia, or Verbo. And I suspect you'll see a similar approach from 99% of the Fortune 500 or the Inc. 5000 companies out there. And that's really the one you see from Vacasa. We try to keep it positive. Ultimately, we want everyone in this business to be successful. We want owners and guests who stay with us or stay with someone else to have a good experience. So they keep coming back to the business. And I do think, and we've seen this over the past really decade, right? The rising tide in this space has helped us all. And so, we hope, we wish the best to everyone, including V-Trips. it's just our mantra. You're not going to see us get into kind of a negative thing, and we're pretty proud of how we're dealing with our homeowners and guests.
Now, great answer. And then we can move on from this. But Milo in this article, mentions that basically bankruptcy, like basically if either Sonder or Vacasa are continuing down this path, they are on a path to bankruptcy. Do you have like what are your thoughts on that? I know we're not shit. You're not going ahead and going blow for blow. That's not what I'm asking. I'm asking is there any truth in what he's saying that you're on the path to bankruptcy?
I mean, certainly not for Vacasa, right? Sonder, I can't speak for them. We've never gotten into that business model for a bunch of reasons. It's very different. I don't love that business, as people have heard me say time and time again, more just from the aspect of, I just don't like the ratio of revenues to costs, but I love our business, right? I love our business model, and no, I think nothing could be farther from the realm of possibility.
Hey everyone, this episode is brought to you by Casago, and
John, you mean Casago?
No, I meant Casago.
John, that's not how you say it. You gotta get our sponsor's name right, man.
Anyway, as I was saying before I got cut off, this episode is brought to you by Casago. And if you haven't heard of them, then here's the deal. Casago helps bring the biggest tech and strategy to the local operators so they can take on the big players. Casago's franchise model really does streamline the operations of the local and traditional vacation rental management company, making them the local heroes with a global presence.
And the industry changing as much as it has, Casago's not only bringing these high-powered tools to the local operators, but they're also creating something even more powerful by making sure everyone is in the community and constantly learning from different markets and operators.
We tell you this because they've joined us to get this exclusive offer just for checking them out a little bit more. Go to casago.com/nobs. That is casago.com/NOBS to book your discovery call. What's included, you ask? A review of your business operation expenses to identify where you can save money, information on how to partner with Casago or Casago to scale your company, and a free $100 Amazon gift card for attending their 1-hour discovery call. Now let's get back to the pod.
Dude, so it's Casago.
No, it's for sure Casago.
You have no idea what you're talking about. It's Casago.
No, dude, you're wrong.
Whatever. Let's get back to the business.
Thank you.
And it goes back to logistics, right? Too. I want to say this because I am all for dialogue, and I think open, honest dialogue. I think intelligent dialogue. I think talking strategy, but what are we doing? We're talking, right? We're talking. We're speculating while companies are operating. We don't have a magic wand. I could sit up here right now, do a bunch of research and make a forecast about what your business is doing, right? I could actually do that, right? I could post blogs. I could, for whatever my reasoning may be, I could do that. I think we have to take a step back, look at the rhetoric, look at how things are being talked about. And one of the things we said kind of even prior to the call is just be cognizant of the conversation and how the conversations are being had, because I believe healthy dialogue is good. I believe when it takes and veers left, then we suffer, right? Because this is happening in a public forum. These are people's lives. These are people's jobs. These are people's companies. This is people's livelihood. And I just, this is a personal call for me to just be like, hey, let's have these conversations for sure, but let's keep it about the business and keep it there. Again, not everybody's going to agree with your business model. Awesome. Beautiful thing that we can debate all day long, but leave it there. And, we're going to do some things to help kind of promote that. But I appreciate you coming on and actually talking to us about that and really giving your opinion in the space. So thank you.
Yeah. And we've got a great team of people at Vacasa. No one would be there if we didn't think this business had a great future in front of it, right? Period.
Right.
And again, we're focused on the metrics. Our employees are really happy. Our guests and owners are really happy. We're growing well. We're getting better every day. We maniacally pursue improvements. We talked about the housekeeping improvement as a small one, but that's how we run our business, is just focus on how we can continue to improve and just make things better.
Great answers, and I just absolutely love where you're going. And again, I love your role as CSO for the company. We have a few more minutes if you do. I wanted to kind of ask about, what is one thing you'd like our listeners to know about you, and maybe about, where you're trying to, as Chief Strategy Officer, where you're going, trying to drive and strategize for Vacasa. But like, what might our listeners might not know about you and the direction that you're trying to take Vacasa?
Well, I mean, one thing they probably don't know personally is I own a 20-room B&B, and I have for 11 years now. So I've got sort of this like side business going on that I used to be really involved in the early days. You gotta, I mean, Matteo, I think you mentioned your mom had a property. It's a grind, right? It's got a restaurant. It's got a small spa.
Wow.
It was interesting learnings there,
This is Austin?
No,
it's south of Austin. Yeah, ours is south of Austin, about 45 minutes.
Okay.
Is it a boutique hotel, or is it, you run it as a like a short-term rental boutique hotel?
Yeah, no, it's more like a boutique hotel. It's called Sage Hill Inn, and you can check it out online. And so, that's sort of a true like deep dive into hospitality, right? When people show up there, they are, expecting a great meal. They're expecting, the nicest linens they've ever seen. They're expecting a spa treatment. We've got a lot of employees, and you really do learn, firsthand what hospitality looks like. And I've owned that along with one of my good friends and longtime business partners, Eric Goldreyer, who's also involved with TurnKey. And thankfully, we've had a great GM there now for a while. So it's not like I have to get very involved. Thank goodness. But that is just an interesting thing to be sort of an innkeeper on the one hand and a sort of a technology hospitality guy on the other.
Well, it's interesting because I managed this boutique hotel in Portland from Atlanta, and technology is the only way that I can do that. 18 rooms, so went from not managing any short-term rentals to managing 18 individual rooms that I run truly as a hybrid, like we were speaking about earlier. Right. And that's why that resonated with me so much, because I continue to see this middle ground. I continue to see this hybrid of balancing hospitality and logistics. Right. Like, and seeing it in real life, talking about it is theoretical, but the application of actually having to do it cements, like, I feel like I'm so much better because of my being elbows deep in this, failing a lot, learning the hard truths about like what the market really is looking for, right? Like, what's going to keep heads in beds and keep people happy, not what someone says, not what this article says, but like what I'm getting in real time, and what I'm learning in real time is the challenge. And
what's the hybrid aspect of it? You said you run it as a hybrid.
Yeah, so there's no front desk, self check-in. It's 18 rooms. I list them each individually on short-term rental and hotel platforms. We're operationally light, which I think is critically important. But the only reason I'm able to do that is technology, right? I don't have to be there every day, right? I'm not manning a front desk. I don't have a point of sale right directly there that I have to cash out every night. I can control my on the ground operation hours, and there's a lot of things I can do in technology that I can use to make that work. And
what do you use, just out of curiosity, what do you use as like a property management system to manage that?
So actually, I use Hostfully as my property management software system. Shout out to Margot and the team out there. And I have a full, a manager tech stack. I use Price Labs. Like, I use, the things that fit for this hotel, right? Yeah. And again, we're Switzerland in the space when it comes to the show, but I had to pick. And I had to learn, what tech stack works for this boutique hotel, which is not a vacation rental home on the Oregon coast, or, a cabin up in the woods of Mount Hood, right? And it's but I learned so much from those managers about hospitality and looking at how other people run operations and aspects of their business that are similar to mine. I've just been a sponge, and I think I'm grateful for that. But the theory to application part was a very eye-opening and continues to be an eye-opening experience, because that's where the real learning happens for me.
Yeah. No, it is amazing how just the slight differences in the operational model from one boutique operation to another, or one VR market to another, just varies, and how, thankfully there's usually a great software product out there for each of them now.
Yeah. Well, I think that's the exciting part, right? Because the technology for the space is young still, and there's so much more that will be coming up in the future. And I'm looking forward to that too, because I only think it's going to make our business more professional. I think it's going to make the guest experiences better. But again, that's one man's humble opinion. So
yeah.
Well, JB, we're super excited for Vacasa. We're super excited about where you're going as a company, where personally you are going. I want to ask you one last question before we get out of here. What is the most challenging opportunity personally or professionally on the horizon for you?
Yeah, I think it's probably similar to, anyone in this space. It's just trying to juggle a personal life on top of your professional life, right? It's vacation rentals, I think, arguably more so than even hotels. It's a 24-hour game, and there's never an end to what you can be doing and what you can be working on. And especially now that we're working from home, trying to figure out a way to back out and spend time with family, friends, get some breathing room. It's a struggle, and, I think any founder, anybody who owns a property management company out there, or who has done it and sold, they get this, right? It's a hard job. It is a hard job. And it takes its toll on friends, family. And I had always thought that if we got out of the business, I would be able to step back a little bit. And that really hasn't happened with Vacasa for a bunch of reasons. I mean, one is we did the acquisition, and we really liked everybody there. We kind of saw eye to eye, and the first in-person meeting we had, it was like we'd been working together for 10 years. And I remember coming back to my wife saying, I kind of like this gang, and what am I going to do with myself if I don't have a job? Like, I kind of like this business. Like, why would I leave? Right. Well, you make that decision, then you're right back into it, and you're right back into trying to juggle your personal life again. So that's probably been the most challenging part, is just try to separate that stuff out. And I guarantee you, anyone who owns a PM is listening to this has the same experience.
Yeah, and you mentioned you have girls. It was their first wedding they'd been to. How old are your girls, John?
They're 13 and 16.
Okay.
Yeah.
I have 4. So my oldest is 19, 17, and I'm about to have a 13-year-old on the day this drops. I'll have a 13-year-old. This episode drops, and a 10-year-old. So
all girls?
No, girl, boy.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wow, that's a crew, man. That's a big gang.
We're all dads here. Well, John, thank you so much. Appreciate you joining us. We appreciate the transparency. We for those of you listening, again, hit like, leave a review, keep coming. We appreciate this audience. And again, thanks so much for joining us, John.
Yeah, thanks for having me, guys. Great hanging out and chatting. And if you ever need anything else, just let me know.
Awesome.
No, we'll definitely have you back. Thanks.
This podcast is a Hospitality.fm production.